Good afternoon. Lord, help me make this video. It's been about I don't know, 10 days since I made a video, which is kind of a rare thing that hasn't happened in a while. But I'm a little backed up now because I got quite a few ideas, and I know that I'm going to have to make this one is probably going to take a long time. I can just already tell. So today, this is an idea that I had a little while ago about just breaking down I don't know, doing a study on the different times that God has uh, had to kill somebody. And I was thinking this could be a good practice for people because um, I think that first of all, this is something that people don't really like to go into. Definitely never seen any preacher or class or discussion or symposium on all the different times that God killed people. But I think that it's good to look at and also sort of practice your non assumption skills because a lot of things get thrown around by people because of assumptions that are being made into what you're looking at. So I don't know. I guess this is going to be sort of like an example of how I would go about examining all of these different things. And the objective would be really not to put God in a good light or a bad light, but just this is what it is. Let's examine it for what it is. Let's not make it, uh, be some moral indictment against God. And let's not make it all of these reasons, when you look at it, all these reasons made sense. It's listen, this is what it is. We're going to examine it objectively. And we're going to understand the character of God. That is the point. That's why it's in there. Obviously, not obviously, but it's very clear that most of the times that it's in there, the writers understood the context of the time, and I don't think that they necessarily tried to cover for God. I don't think that they had a qualm with it the way that we have qualms with these types of things today. We're very sensitive about these things today. I think there's a mixture, and hopefully you'll see that in these examples. There's a mixture of God, there's a God that can do whatever he wants with his creation vibe. There is you look at the context and God is, these people were uh, corrupt and they were messing things up and he was justified vibe. Then there's it's a ceremonial, it's a holiness, ceremonial, fear the Lord type situation. And, it's an unfortunate circumstance of someone just not uh, having the right understanding of, it would be the same as somebody jumping off a cliff thinking they were going to survive that. So that's the type of vibe that the Bible gives off for it. And, when there's in the ancient world, you don't need a lot of apologies. So a lot of them you can't even really, um, you really have to dig deep and find a context for because um, people be dying. People, they get into quarrels or they one nation, not even a nation, but one town over here is fighting with this town over here. This one, one group of people gets big enough to try to rule the other groups. There's no United Nations, there's no nothing, there's no police force, there's no government, there's no constitution, there's none of this stuff. So you really have to, um, it's an ancient book, and it's one of the only, it's probably the only ancient book that anyone would be reading just like in their everyday lives. It's a very, you gotta like think of the oldest, the most sort of prehistoric setting, the most sort of ancient, I don't know, movie that you've ever seen, and then set it back like 1,000 more years and see if you can get an approximation of what we're talking about. So, yeah, we're going to start with, I don't know if this is going to be chronological or not. I literally just made a list just off the top of my head of like all the different things, all the different sort of instances. And I don't know, I would say there's not a lot. There's a lot of God warning, especially the prophets, about him doing that. When people read, when you get people that are reading these passages of God, they're in Ezekiel, they're in Jeremiah, they're in these where he's talking through the prophets, and he's like, I will rain down whatever, and I will do the pestilence or whatever, that scary passage. Okay, he says that a lot because he's warning the people, and the people are like, could you move? Like, they don't care. And then he does it once. So, and then, a lot of those passages are for things that are way in the future that haven't happened yet. The great and terrible day of the Lord is at the end of time. So he talks about that. He brings it up a lot. He's going to pouring out his wrath a lot, and then do it one time. So you can't always be fooled by the amount of times he talks about it. And then in the whole scheme of things, does he really talk about it that much? He talks about it enough for somebody to write it down, and for it to be compiled so that you can read it and remind yourself of who you're dealing with. That's the point of that. But anyway, so the very first thing that I thought about, obviously, was Noah's Ark. So let's go to that. It's Genesis 6. I have Genesis 6:13. So I did a little bit of research before I started. So it took me a long time to do this little bit of research, by the way. I was not expecting that. So anyway, so Genesis 6:13, which I don't know, people don't even believe that it happened, but they do this thing where we're not going to acknowledge that it happened, but we're going to treat God as though it did happen, so that we have an excuse to not take him seriously. But so most people don't believe that it happened, but as a story, they find it very horrible. So let me back up to 12. Well, or 11. Okay, so this is the account of Noah's Ark. Okay, so now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So make yourself an ark of cypress wood, etc., etc. So, yeah, pretty self-explanatory. I think, though, that when we're thinking about a concept like this, we sort of gloss over the specifics. The idea that the earth was corrupt and full of violence, is that hyperbole? Does that mean, it's sort of like how when we say, oh, everyone's talking about this. Is that what he means, or is it literal? It does say that all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. It doesn't say all the people on earth except for Noah, but that can be implied. And here's what I'm drawing just from my previous study of different things. Because We talked about how Abraham spoke to God about Sodom and Gomorrah, who Sodom and Gomorrah is ironically not on this list. That is crazy that I would forget that. Um, so we will look at that. But he talks to him about that, and he says, well, you're not going to destroy the righteous and the wicked together. And we see that Abraham sort of inadvertently figured out this formula with God, which is if there's 10 righteous people in a city, he's not going to destroy it. So I don't know how big the city is. I don't know how big cities got back in the day. Let's say it's a couple hundred people. Then we're talking about a 5% type thing, 1%. If those people are in the thousands, it's a point something percent. So God is not just not destroying cities because of wickedness. He's keeping things going for the sake of a small group of righteous people. So he's not punishing the wicked. Like, that would take so long, it would be like all of his time. He would have to act when the amount of righteous people gets so low that it's just not attainable anymore. Also, I'm thinking of a passage in, I think it was Ezekiel, where he talks about the Israelites, and he's talking about Israel and how corrupt it got, and which is another underappreciated thing. Just like I don't think we appreciate how bad it had to have been at this point for the entire earth to get destroyed. Keep in mind, like, he didn't elect to give them a rule book or any laws or anything like that. So why that is, I'm not sure. The Bible does make clear every single time, whether it's, before the flood, after Noah, that everyone is aware that God is God. So everybody knows who God is. It's not like, well, how do we know? Can we see him? Everybody knows who he is, and they're choosing to not follow him, which I think is part of the reason why he didn't even bother giving them no laws and handing down no nothing to them, because they all knew who he was. It didn't care. It just instantly went off the rails. And because when you have God saying, I'm going to destroy the entire earth, and he's literally saying that he regrets making mankind, it got bad. Like, it was bad. Like, we think it's bad now, and we think, and we can feel it, and I think it is sort of, I don't think it's the same, but there is like a darkness that we can all feel, like, that is like escalating. But this here, I think, is beyond. Like, I firmly believe that, all of any and all religions and mysticism and anything that we experience here on earth came from this time period. And who knows? Maybe the pyramids were built during this time. It's like, what are you going to do when you flood a pyramid, especially one that's built the way that one was? Those are built, and they're still, no one can figure out how they were built. Stuff like that. So I think that it was pretty bad. And then back to that passage in Ezekiel where he says, even if Job, I think he says Noah, I think he mentions Abraham or Moses. He said, even if Job, Noah, and Moses, I don't want to put in three random people, but it's basically, the three of the big boys, if they themselves were in this land, they would only be able to save their own lives. So that's what Ezekiel writes down that God said, which indicates that that is a special case because typically a righteous person is able to save their lives and the life of their family. And the reason why I bring that up is because I think that's what's going on with Noah. Because a lot of people have questions about Noah's hot mess family after the flood happens and they start over and it's like back to the hot mess stuff again. I think what happened is that Noah's righteousness saved him and his family, and there was, I think, 8 of them total, including Noah. I think it's just 8, yeah. So 8 of them made it. I mean, naturally, you're going to need some help if you're going to get the whole human race thing happening again and multiplying, but still, 8 people in total. And so when God says, like, when God is telling you how bad it was in Israel before it got, completely upended and they went into exile, when he has to say, like, even if 3 of the most righteous people that have ever lived were in your city, they could only save their own lives. They couldn't even say their cousins. They couldn't say their daughters, brothers. No, none of them. Just their own righteousness would be able to. So, which is kind of interesting when you think about it, because now he's saying, okay, I'll keep a city going for 3, but only 3, and then had to be the most righteous 3 in history. But that's a lot. And just think about, like, being surrounded, being the only righteous person in a city. Is that even something you want? Just let him burn the whole city down. I mean, while we're on the subject, we might as well go on to Sodom and Gomorrah, which I think is, let's see, where is it? Is it before Judah and them? No, it's not. It can't be. Okay, so I am kind of going in chronological order. Okay, so Sodom and Gomorrah. I want to get him talking to Abraham. Hold on a second. I can't believe I did not even put this on my list. All right, so this is very interesting. This is going to take on, this might have to be a series, I think. All right, so this is very interesting. If you've never read this before. So, how did Sodom and Gomorrah get destroyed? So, it starts out that he goes to visit Abraham. And he tells them that he's going to make him into a great nation and Sarah's going to have a child and all of this stuff. And literally, it's God and 2 other people. Angels, people. It literally says Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. And, he does his little hospitality thing and they come and sit and they make flour and bread and all that stuff. And it's kind of cryptic. It's kind of like one of them said this, one of them said that. And then suddenly it is, then the Lord said to Abraham, this and that. So God has appeared to him in human form. And he says, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Abraham will surely become a great powerful nation. All nations on the earth will be blessed through him, etc., etc. Then the Lord says, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great and their sin so grievous that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know. So this is like badass, okay? So for so many reasons. First of all, the idea that like we know that God sees all, and I think everybody has this weird sort of a voyeuristic idea about God being able to see things and know everything. And King David says, if I make my bed in hell, you're there. Darkness, the darkest darkness is like daytime for you. Like you see all things. So we know that, but then to hear God sort of describe this chain of command almost that it's kind of like run up the chain to get to the top guy is like, what's going on? That's cool. But then on the other side, like on the other side of the same coin, it's like, man, Sodom and Gomorrah doing so much hot mess stuff that God himself had to get down to the thing and see how bad it was. Yikes. That's really bad. And then also, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great. From who? From what? Like, is it the innocent blood being shed? Like, what is the outcry? Where is that coming from? So there is a lot in him saying that. Um, so then, it says. The men turned away. I'm really tripping because I haven't read this story in a long time. So now I'm like, the men turned away and went towards Sodom, but Abraham remained standing before the Lord. Then Abraham approached him and said, will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of 50 righteous people in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you. Will not the judge of all the earth do right? So that's quite the statement. And God was like, I feel you. He's like, if I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake. So now that just made Abraham even more curious. And he's like, what if it's 5 less than 50? And they do this, they go back and forth. And he says 40, 30, 20, and then they finally get down to 10. And every single time, Abraham's like, may the Lord not be angry, but let me speak. What if it's only 30? What if it's only 20? So it gets down to 10, and then Abraham's like, now a lot of people like to say, oh, because Lot had, he's counting up Lot and his family or whatever. And that's cool. I think Abraham could have probably just said, can you get my boy Lot out before you? But I think he had more of a philosophical question about it. But it's possible that he was just sort of sneakily trying to see if he could get Lot in with all that. Either way. So we find out through that God is willing to spare an entire wicked city for 10 righteous people. Okay. So that's, just keep that in your little cap of knowledge. Okay. So this brings me to another subject that I wasn't going to do a video on it, but I was thinking about it because it's just a little tidbit thing. So I don't know if anybody knows the story of this Sodom thing. It's pretty wild. They were off the chain, It's actually really like the way it's set up is very cinematic because you have God having this conversation with Abraham. He's like, I'm going to go see if it's as bad as I think it is. And then like the next scene is the two angels that went off while God stayed behind and talked to Abraham. And and he's like, the two angels see Lot, and Lot's like, he doesn't know. I'm sure I don't know. It's very strange when you read these things because it's like they seem to know that they're not like usual people, but they just are like, I don't know. I guess you would just do the same thing you would do if an honored guest came to your house. It's just like, you know, please come inside and do this and wash your hands and whatever. So they do all that. And then at night, the men of the city, and this says, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. That's insane. In my brain, like I've read this story a couple times. I picture like maybe like 25 people. And now I'm just like, whoa, that's an insane amount of people. And then he says, they call to Lot, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them. So this city's off the chain. Like, what? And then it says, Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him and said, no, my friends, do not do this wicked thing. Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof. And then they say, get out of our way. This fellow came here as a foreigner. Now he wants to play the judge. They felt judged. Okay, so anyway, let me just stop there because anybody who encounters this story is horrified by the fact that he would offer his 2 daughters to them. And yeah, it's pretty horrifying. And here's the thing, you come across something like this in the Bible and you're horrified. And what I like to do is just be in the dark for like decades. It's okay, it happens. The first time you do it, like the first time it happens, you're not in the dark. You're not willing to be in the dark for that long. But the thing is, you're in the dark for so much things, but then like God reveals them to you. You go, oh my gosh. And then sometimes he gives it to you right away. Sometimes he gives it to you in a week, sometimes a month, sometimes a year, sometimes a couple of years. And after a while, you start to trust that the answers will come. So you are willing to wait for the answers for something, some revelation. You're going to come across something. You're going to hear some message. You're going to hear some out of context thing that doesn't have anything to do with what you've heard, what you were studying, and that's going to give you the insight that you need to remember or to understand this passage that you read. So that's happened to me so many times. I still have a couple of passages like this that are like decades long that I just like, I'm like, wow, why is this in here like that? What does it mean? And I see so many people that rush to either to judge that and go, well, this is a barbaric text and it's full of barbarism or whatever. But those of us who are willing to wait, because not only because, obviously, yes, I'm a Christian. Yes, I want to believe that the Bible is the word of God and it is 100% true and therefore 100% good and righteous. But by and large, I also have been given years and years and years and years of experience with these things. And I know that there is an answer out there. And I'm willing to realize that I may not get the answer ever. Well, cut to like last week or something. And I finally got an insight on this passage that I won't say it's like, oh, this is the answer. But I got an insight that I just honestly would have never gotten ever and hadn't gotten. And it's because I was listening to something about Islam. I was listening to, I think it might have been that Son of Hamas guy that does a lot of interviews. And he was somebody who was talking about the culture of Muslim culture and how everything is, it's a shame culture. It's it's very like the pressure to do things for family and this and that. And he said something about how men would rather stone their daughters or have their daughters killed than to bear the shame of having never been able to protect them from, if something happens to them, if they get raped or whatever. It's like they would rather that child just be like go somewhere else, be killed or something, than to have to bear the shame of not being able to protect them. And because when it's the culture is imposing that, it's not a it's kind of like there's nothing, it's not bad, because I do think that men should have that, because they are uh, made to be the protectors of the women, right? Well, but what we don't think about is like, okay, well, let's say that you do that job poorly. Let's say that you're not, uh, you're a good protector by and large, but you got caught slipping. Or let's say that there's all of these things, these character things in you that can cause you to turn on the thing you're supposed to protect and blame the daughter, blame the wife, because now you have to bear this shame that you don't want to bear. It's like we don't even think about the intense pressure and the other side of that coin. It's like, yeah, that it's there to give them incentive to do the protecting, but when things happen, and they inevitably will, because nothing is perfect and no one is perfect, it can really, like, that's a horrible type of anguish that you have to feel. And if you don't have, the God of the Bible there to give you some passages that can help you, it can get really bad and really nasty. So that triggered a lot of different things, and I was like, so not even like completely on the same tip, but I'm like, okay, so basically, what if he did that because, like, I just opened up this whole other possibility of human behavior that I had just never seen before. So I'm thinking, okay, Lot is surrounded by all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old. Them women is not surviving anyways. They're not going to survive. It's like and obviously this doesn't happen. I don't think this happens every day, every night. I don't know. Maybe they pulled out, this is the big guns or whatever. So I think that Lot figured out, like, this is the end. Like, this is a DEFCON 1 situation that has just happened, because these two angels, these two big strapping men came, and now all bets are off. And they're like, you're a foreigner. Like, well, and he says, this fellow came here as a foreigner and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them. So they're the all bets are off. Everything's off. It's done. And I think he realized the situation. We don't realize the situation because we're like, what even is this? He knows what's going on. So what if he did that in sort of this futile attempt, because they're going to get the daughters if they want the daughters. But it's like, okay, they're surrounding the city. We're all screwed in every possible sense of the word, probably. What can I do? What's left for me to do? Because his job is still to be the protector of the people in the house as a man, He's got guests. That's another part of the culture. Like, he can't have guests in his house be subjected to this abuse. Like, and honestly, I don't know. I think he's just, the brain is a little bit addled having lived in this city, maybe, because it's just like, and also we take for granted like this sort of American give me liberty or give me death idea that just simply does not exist yet. It just doesn't. You need Jesus. You need a lot of other reassurances and knowledge to even get to a place like that, where it's just like, pry it out of my cold dead hands. Like, there's no guns, there's no Rambo type. We're not there yet. Okay. So, I'm thinking like, okay, he could either deal with the shame of him not being able to protect his daughters and them coming in and getting them, or deal with the shame of him offering up his daughters freely and being like, oh no, I totally, that was that was my strategy that I came up with, for you to have them, not me failing as a dad. Like, uh, I don't know. I feel like I have talked about this too much already. So, and then on top of that, to have his guests. So maybe he didn't know that they were angels. I don't know if he would be like, hey, can we get some angel magic stuff going? But he is behaving as though they are just new strangers from the town. He's like, hey, yeah, maybe not spend the night out here in the square. You might want to come inside. Like, Lot has to be like, yeah, no, I wouldn't stay out here. You might want to like come home with me. Like, you're so. I mean, this city is wild, wild. So the idea that things are, yes, things are getting progressively worse, but I think it's like it's ebbing and flowing. It's getting to a high point, and then God has to eradicate, and then it gets back low again, and then it gets to another high point. So I do think eventually that we're going to get to the point where we're going to reach a higher point than these people did, but only because of technology and all the things that are going to allow us to be able to do that. This is a high watermark here. This is some nasty, nasty evil. And then to have to get the whole earth destroyed, I mean, that stuff, when Jesus says, like, as in the days of Lot and the days of Noah, like, that's scary. So that's what it was. So anyway, that's just kind of like a side thing. Let me see. I think we already just talked about like God destroyed the city, and then it says, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Hurry, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished. Flee for your lives, don't look back, and don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away." Excuse me. So yeah, it was like, what? Everyone was hesitating. Which, to be fair, I did have an experience recently where I thought like the rapture was happening. I don't know. I woke up and I was like, I don't know. I felt like the spirit on me, and I was just like, "What's happening? Are we leaving? What is?" I was like freaked out, and I thought the rapture was happening. And then I think it was just like a test for me, because that's what happened. Where I was just like, "Wait, what?" And I was actually freaked out. I was not ready to go. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I was literally thinking about like the house, because like my pipes were leaking, and I was like, oh my gosh, like the guy's coming today. Like, it was a mess. It was a mess. And I was like, what about this? What about it? Like, I couldn't believe it. And then I was like, oh my God, sis, are you not ready? Like, if it really did happen right now, would you just be like overwhelmed by the cares? Like, I couldn't believe it. So, I'm working on that. But I can imagine if they were just like, yeah, all of this is all going away. We're destroying it right now in this moment. You know, I used to judge them, but it's just it's a lot. Especially then, it's not like you know, oh, we just bought this house 3 years ago. It's like all that's you. All of that is what you built up, and you're there, and you got to just let that all get destroyed. But so yeah, that's Sodom and Gomorrah. Not really. That's just the Cliff Notes. But I just wanted to say a little thing about that. So we did Noah's Ark. Okay. Oops, sorry. So let's go to. I think we should just do Genesis today. I don't think I'm going to be able to get to any of these other ones. I got 13 of these things, and I'm on number 2. 3 if you count the one that I just added for emergency. All right, so here's another instance. This is Genesis 38. So far we've got Noah's Ark, Sodom and Gomorrah, which are both 2 corporate kind of things where God is destroying a population. And we also see that the reason that's given to us is sin, wickedness, corruption. It's just an overwhelming amount. Okay. So now we've got Judah's sons. Okay. So this is now sort of an individual type thing rather than a corporate thing. So Judah so Judah had sons. Okay. He had one son named and another son named Onan. And it says Judah got a wife for his firstborn and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the Lord's sight, so God put him to death. It doesn't say why, okay? Then Judah said to Onan, who is the second son, sleep with your brother's wife and fulfill your duty as her brother-in-law to raise up offspring for your brother. But Onan knew that the child would not be his, so whenever he slept with his brother's wife, he spilled his semen on the ground to keep from providing offspring for his brother. What he did was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death also. Which caused a conundrum for Tamar, because then Judah says he had one more son named Shelah. And he says, live as a widow in your father's household until my son Shelah grows up. For he thought he may die too, just like his brothers, which is a hot mess. What's going on that you are making wicked sons like this? So Tamar went to live in his father's household. After a long time, Judah's wife died. And when Judah had recovered from his grief, he went up to Timnah to the men who were shearing sheep, and his friend Hira went with him. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Basically, Tamar goes and pretends to be a prostitute in that city and sleeps with Judah to get some kids because she's been waiting in his father's house. It said for after a long time his wife died. So she can't go. She can't, what's she gonna do? She can't get remarried. She can't do anything. So she's in limbo, right? Until she has children or something to sort of take away the shame of the situation. So she ends up tricking Judah into sleeping with her. And she conceives and she gives birth to twins. Now, a little bit ago, I was reading Jubilees, and that story was in there, and it dawned on me, was it Jubilees? I think it was. It dawned on me that God had replaced Judah's sons because Judah's sons were wicked, and so he gave him 2 more sons with Tamar. And that, I had never seen that before. Before that story was just they were wicked and God took them out. That's, his prerogative. That's what he does. to me, anyways. And I had never seen that there was a plan to that. He was like, because Jesus comes through Judah, David comes through Judah. He's like, I'm not coming through no hot mess DNA. So we're gonna get some new sons in here, and that's basically like why he did that. To me, it's just like that's hilarious. So that one's kind of fun. Let's see, 45 minutes. Let's do. There's actually okay. Let's go chronological. Let's do chronological. Let's do something from Exodus or something Moses related. We'll do Moses himself because I was sort of thinking about how Moses died or what happened that caused Moses to die the way that he did. So I don't know if anybody knows. I'm sure you do. Some of you do. All 5 of you know that Moses never entered the promised land because God punished him. And it's actually quite sad. Like I was just rereading this. God doesn't make a big to do about it, which is also very interesting. Moses was really like a special guy. Like, I don't know. You kind of sort of see them in like descending order almost. Like, you tend to. It's like Abraham and then, Isaac and Jacob and Moses. And like the patriarchs are kind of just put in this lump of greatness. But like Moses is something really, really special. And the relationship that he had with God and all the stuff that he really did. I mean, he was basically like a king. If they had an actual land for him to rule, he would have been the king. He would have, but everything was such a hot mess, and they were just mobile, and everybody was, he was a king that nobody trusted. Like at any like no one trusted Moses more than like 2 years at a time. Like it was just a grueling leadership role that he had. And constantly having to, it's just what he had to do was just insane. So, so God is dealing out punishments, and I didn't put anything about. There is a one instance after this that I did put it in here, but I'm trying to think of like, was there any like plagues that broke out or anything like that, like where people died like that? And I think there was one after the quail incident. So I might have to add that to the list too. Oh gosh. So anyway, so I thought this was interesting too because Moses isn't just the people. He isn't just this town and it all got wiped out. Moses is God's servant, and God like really has a special relationship with Moses. But Moses ain't immune. He's not exempt from having to obey God. And in a lot of these cases, we see that you kind of have more responsibility as a servant of God. So, yeah, I'm going to add that guy too. I'm going to add the prophet. Okay, whatever. And then, so it says Moses and Aaron, they're complaining. Here's the context. They're complaining about being in the desert. Spoiler, they're complaining about being in the desert. Why did you bring us out of Egypt out here? There's nothing out here and there's no water. And then the Lord says to Moses, take the staff and you and your brother Aaron gather the assembly together. Speak to that rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water. You will bring water out of the rock for the community so that they and their livestock can drink. So then it says that Moses took the staff in the Lord's presence, just as he commanded him. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, "Listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock?" Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with his staff, which God did not tell him to do. But interestingly, instead of it just like not working, and him going to be like, why isn't this working? Which, is an option. Seems like that would have been an option too for God to just like make it be like, that's not what I told you to do. But it says, water gushed out and the community and their livestock drank. So God let him do it wrong. And then it says, but the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them. So that sucks. That really sucks. I mean, they messed up last minute. They didn't lose their lives or anything, but they literally, it wasn't no light punishment. And then, so then we see that Aaron dies, before that chapter is over. It says, the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, Aaron will be gathered to his people. He will not enter the land I give the Israelites because both of you rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah. Get Aaron and his son Eleazar and take them up to Mount Hor. Remove Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar, for Aaron will be gathered to his people. He will die there. So, that sucks. But, I mean, I don't know really what possessed him. There's a lot of creative sermons about why Moses struck the rock when he's supposed to speak to it and why God punished him for that. A lot of types and shadows of Christ type of stuff. But honestly, why did he do that? I think there's more to it, especially in the way that God talks about it. And then Moses' death is actually in two places. But I chose this one because there's a little bit more detail closer to what I'm trying to talk about. So, 48. On that same day, the Lord told Moses, this is, 12 chapters away from Aaron's death. So I don't know what that does in time, but the Lord told Moses, go up into the Abarim range to Mount Nebo in Moab, across from Jericho, and view Canaan, the land I am giving the Israelites as their own possession. There on the mountain that you have climbed, you will die and be gathered to your people, just as your brother Aaron died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his people. This is because both of you broke faith with me in the presence of the Israelites at the waters of Meribah Kadesh in the desert of Zin, and because you did not uphold my holiness among the Israelites. Therefore, you will see the land only from a distance. You will not enter the land I am giving to the people of Israel. So, right there's a lot right there that we take for granted. God laid out the whole thing to him. He told him what he did, what day it was, what happened, what was his infraction. I still don't know what possessed him to do that in particular, but it just says, you broke faith with me in the presence of the Israelites. Here's where you did it, and because you did not uphold my holiness among the Israelites. So he's telling them exactly why. I mean, this is like when you get called into the office, they give you the three, there's like, here's your copy of the incident. Here's like, we're going to keep this, sign it. Like, God is the judge. Like he's not just like scary God who does stuff and maybe you might get an explanation. Like he is I like people need to understand like our whole society is based on the character of this God. Like and wherever this God is not worshipped, they're not doing it like this. Like if you do something wrong, uh, you might not get your talking to in triplicate in the office. Now there's a lot of bureaucracy and nonsense that can like make that just um, asinine and some stupid thing. But by and large, like this type of like transparent, just um, explanation, and then the fact that he like let him go climb this mountain and you can look at it. I'll let you look at it. Like that's a lot, and it really gives the energy. Like I really wish you would have been able to like go in there, like to let him like get up on the mountain and see that is really touching actually. So he's like that there's where you were going. And just to get them all the way to there and then not be able to see it is just the whole thing is just like heartbreaking. And then in 34 it talks about the death of Moses, and I just thought this was fascinating. um, so he takes him up on the mountain, and the Lord says, "This is the land I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob when I said I will give it to your descendants. I have let you see it with your eyes, but you will not cross over into it." And Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in Moab, as the Lord had said. Okay, first of all, didn't realize it was in Moab. That's cool. He buried him in Moab in the valley opposite Beth Peor. But to this day, no one knows where his grave is. And I was like, hold up. Because I've heard that, it's like God buried Moses himself, blah, blah, blah. But I like read it and I was like, what? And then there's like a little footnote and it says, or he was buried in Moab. But even if you say he was buried in Moab, but to this day no one knows where his grave is, okay, well, who buried him then? It had to have been God if no one knows where his grave is. So that's cool. God buried Moses. So yeah, Moses was a special dude. Like, what? All right. Well, this is going to be a series. It's very extensive. I have 10 more to do, and I added one. So, yeah, we're going to do a series on why God kills people. Maybe that's the title. All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you later, soon, bye, whenever. Yeah. Okay. I messed that up.